go. All right then. So hi everyone, and welcome to today's FlexNHS webinar hosted by Milton Keynes University Hospital. Today we are planning to shine the spotlight on returning to work, in particular following maternity, paternity or shared parental leave, and really cover all aspects from keep in touch days to knowing what kind of leave you wanted to take, maintaining that communication with your manager and your colleagues throughout the process. A bit of brief housekeeping before we introduce the panel. There is an opportunity for you to ask questions, so please do post them and we will come on to a Q&A after hearing from each of the panel and their stories. And please do feel free to interact with the conversation on Twitter, either during or before the session. We are recording the session today, so we'll be able to share it and catch up with it on demand afterwards. And I'm going to start by just introducing the panel briefly, and then we'll come on to stories. So the agenda for today is the panel we're going to talk at a high level about their own experiences and what their own story is, and then following that we'll move on to the Q&A. We'll aim to finish by about 12:45, just to avoid people sort of scrambling between complete back-to-back calls, as we know how that can be at the moment. So panel, could I first just ask you each to please just share your name, your role and where you're from, and then we'll come back to you afterwards to sort of go through your stories. Radhika, can I come to you first, please?
Thank you. I'm just checking if the live is on me. Hopefully it is. I'm Radhika Rangaraju. I'm Program Director for Digital Pharmacy, Optometry, Dentistry, Ambulance and Community Services in NHSX, and I'm based in Manchester.
I've done the mute thing. Thanks, Radhika. Can I come over to you, please, Michelle?
Yes. Have I got the red box? Yeah. So my name's Michelle Horridge. I'm a public health registrar and I'm based in Yorkshire.
Cool. Thanks, Michelle. And over to you, please, Bill.
Hello, my name's Bill Marnie and I'm a consultant heart surgeon in Liverpool.
Thanks, Bill. And Maddie?
Sorry, it wouldn't let me unmute there for a second, but I got it. Hi, I'm Maddie Folk-Dehova. I'm an ST5 paediatric registrar in East Yorkshire. I'm also a deputy chair of Yorkshire RJDC and LTFT rep to the Royal College of Peds and Child Health.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, Parminder.
Hi. Sorry, just checking I've got the red box as well. Hi, I'm Parminder Kaur. I'm Senior Business Analyst at NHSX. I'm based in Leeds.
Great, thank you. Kate, could I also just get you to please introduce yourself and just to talk about Flex for 1 or 2 minutes, just what it's about and what we try and do.
Yep. Hi, I am Kate Jarman. I'm Director of Corporate Affairs at Milton Keynes Hospital, and along with Asha, a couple of years ago founded a platform called FlexNHS, which is a predominantly social media platform on Instagram and Twitter to promote and enable flexible working across the NHS. So we have a network of around 14,500 people who engage with us in a wonderful, fabulous way, talking about flexible working, sharing stories, sharing good practice, calling out poor practice, and we help promote and influence policy and lobby for positive change, lots of which we have seen over the last couple of years, and especially as we go forward this year in September, the promises that were set out in the people plan around flexible working by default and flex from day one are coming into force in a policy framework that's been agreed through NHS employers. That's really positive and really powerful. So lots and lots of change positively and proactively coming into play in the NHS over the next couple of months, which would be great to be part of. Thank you. Back to you, Asha.
Thanks, Kate. And I just realised I've spectacularly forgotten to introduce myself. My name's Asha Cowie, and I am currently the workstream lead for establishing the NHS Digital Academy, working with HEE and SCW, although I am joining Surrey and Borders Partnership Trust in August to take on a strategic transformation role, and also co-founder of FlexNHS with Kate. So as Kate's mentioned, the power of FlexNHS has always very much been around, that peer support, how we share stories, and really helping individuals to find solutions, ideas, and some peer support. And that's really the reason why we brought this panel here today, to sort of shine the spotlight on this important area. I'm now going to go to each of our panelists and just ask them to share their story for a couple of minutes, and why you're here today. So please, of course, only share what you feel comfortable to speak about, but it'd be really great if you could tell me a little bit to set the scene about your experience. So, when were you on leave and why? What sort of leave did you take? Did you do keep in touch days? Did you stay in touch with your organisation? And how are you feeling? And anything else you sort of want to share as part of that personal story bit. I'm going to come over to Michelle first, if that's okay, please.
Yeah, that's fine. Hi everyone again. So my experience is that I've got 3 young children. So I've had 3 periods of maternity leave, and I had my children quite early on in my medical career, which, as I'm sure Maddie will attest to, it's not as common. So there aren't as many people who you can ask for help, or people that know what to do. So with my first, that was back in 2011, I was a foundation doctor, and I didn't really know what a kit day was. I'd never heard of it. Nobody really told me about it. I think I was emailed a policy at some point when I said I was having a baby, and I only had 6 months off and then returned full time. So I never did them. My second baby was 2013. I was a little bit more on it, but not much, and I was still really junior, and I only had 8 months off, and actually decided not to take them because I didn't want to, and this is a very personal thing, but I didn't want to waste any time that I wasn't at home with my little one, because I wasn't off for very long. And then by the time I had my 3rd period of maternity leave, it was 2015, I'd been in touch with fantastic sort of union people like Maddie, and by then we'd started to build a bit more of a network of junior doctors who were less than full time or who'd had children, and there were just more people who knew more things, and I just had more information. So I did do some keep in touch days, and I suppose one of the things I hope that today generates discussion on, and I don't know if other people want to share about this, but it's changed a little bit now, but you couldn't take your keep in touch days in the annual leave portion of your leave. So I took a year off, so I had kind of 6 weeks annual leave, and actually that's when it would have been most useful to do my keep in touch days, just before I would return to work. And at the time that wasn't an option, and that is changing, and that's brilliant. But I think the other thing I really wanted to highlight from today was that keep in touch days are brilliant, and they were really flexible and work were really good, but finding somebody to have your child for one day randomly on a Wednesday is quite difficult. And I think there's this global assumption that people have these massive support networks and family and partners that can just drop things. And I'm lucky, my husband's a shift worker, and he would have happily taken a couple of days annual leave. I'm not sure he would have taken 10 days annual leave. And I'm not sure that is kind of factored in when we talk about kit days. You can't just find a nursery place for 6 hours. So I think that's just one of the things I wanted to highlight for today, that the practicalities of taking them are not always as straightforward, but in principle, I think they're a brilliant idea. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. That's a great start. And, it's really interesting, that viewpoint of, actually they're, are they the right thing for everyone, and perhaps they're not, and that's okay. And I think, one size fits all is absolutely a big theme that we see across everything we do at FlexNHS. So thanks for sharing your insight. Radhika, can I come to you next, please?
Yes, sure, Asha. I have taken maternity leave twice, once in 2011 and once in 2016, which spanned into 2017. My first maternity leave was for about 9 months, and the second one, similar to what Michelle was saying, was for about 7 months. I did use my keep in touch days in many ways, which I found beneficial. So the first time around, and I think it was because I was lucky that my line manager had supported his wife through a maternity leave thrice, that he was very upfront about what he thought keep in touch days could be used as. So we had a very useful conversation beforehand, which things like we discussed ideas. Would you like to get a copy of all the weekly bulletins that go out from this team, the organization, the CEO message that comes out once a month? And I thought, yeah, that's a good idea. No pressure that there was an expectation that I would read it, but I was getting copies of those into my personal email account. And these were sort of very generic messages, but I did use those in those nights when you're breastfeeding and you don't struggle to get back to sleep. And somehow I found it quite useful to read those random bits of information in newsletters, and I found myself well connected. I did have 2 physical days of keep in touch the first time around. And that was quite useful. So I just took the baby in the pram in there, and I was able to have some sort of social, but some work-related engagements in that space. The second time round, though, it was a very different situation. The second time round, I had a much more senior role, which had a team which was distributed across the country. And therefore, there wasn't really one local place for me to go to. And traveling to London from Manchester for a keep in touch day just wasn't a feasible option. So it was a very different situation. Though just before starting work, I did manage to go and meet the team for one day. But the practicalities of it, when you have more than one child, is very, very complicated. So what do you do with the first child? The whole situation around your partner having to take a day off, and there is an assumption, it's a general assumption on all things, including sickness of a child, that there's a massive support network around you, and many of us don't have a village to bring up a child, and we are doing it amongst sometimes in a solo way and sometimes just as a couple. So second time around, the challenge was very different. So there were lots of practical things that I found helpful. So the newsletters, I used it again the second time round. Policy documents that were relevant, they were sent across to me, no pressure sort of situation, but they were helpful. But I must say that the bit that the second time around, I was also very, very nervous about, and I sort of felt a bit more pressurized myself to go back to work a bit sooner and to be more in it during my keep in touch days, was because the first time around I had such an awful experience of managing sickness of my child after going back to work, that the second time around I was just very, very worried about that situation. So I did have keep in touch days, but they were more anxiety fueled the second time around. All my experiences really motivated me when NHSX was established and I took up the role to co-found a parent staff network, because I felt that the 2 times that I was coming back from maternity, there wasn't really a network in place to have a discussion about anything really. There was a carers network, but there was nobody that I could speak to. And I think that the parent staff, having networks like that would make a massive difference, and we should have them in more places.
Great, thank you for that, Radhika, and we'll come back to networks within local organisations and shortly. So, Maddie, can I come over to you, please, next? I think you're coming back. No. Okay. Well,
I'm just going to talk if that's okay. So I'm an ST5 in paediatrics, first qualified in 2008, and I'm just coming to the end of my my 4th maternity leave for my 5th child. I had my first baby in medical school in 2008, had to be back on the wards when he was 2 weeks old, just so we could finish medical school and get on to F1. There wasn't really financially any other option but to start work, really. I've been LTFT ever since. I had my second child 2 years later in my first my second F1 year. Then I had a third child in F2 in 2012. 2016, I had a child in ST2, and now I've just had another one in ST5. I didn't use any keep in touch days in my first three, well, the first 3 times I had children, because again, when you have children as a foundation doctor, you can find yourself in a situation where there really isn't much option of flexibility to you, or there certainly wasn't back then. So I took 6 months leave with my second child and 4 with the third child, so that I could finish F2 in sync, because otherwise that gap without pay or that gap without employment would have been a real blow to my family. So what I had to do was to really cut down my maternity leave to be able to afford to get into training and to continue with medical training. But when I had my 4th baby, I took a year. My husband was working in Leeds at the time. I'm in East Yorkshire, just outside Hull. He had a year's post in Leeds cardiology, and with non-resident on-call, so that would mean he'd have to stay there overnight because we were too far away. And I do peds, which is very on-call heavy, loads and loads of nights, weekends. So we were very lucky to have a baby when we did, and to have a year of maternity leave when we did, because otherwise there's no way we could have really made it work. I have no family in this country, or very little. They're all in Coventry. So during that maternity leave, I used a few keep in touch days on things like training days and courses and things like that. It was quite difficult to get childcare to get in for practical things, but it worked very well to catch up on stuff virtually. So that was great, and I thought there was absolutely no problems. And it had all been approved by my educational supervisor until I got back to work, and the work that I returned to was in a different department from the one in which my educational supervisor was. And it was made very clear to me by one of the consultants in the department that had been nominally paying me that they did not find it appropriate that another department had sanctioned payment for days that did not bring them any benefit as a department. But it didn't actually cause any problems. It was just a few throwaway comments from someone who was known to make that sort of comment anyways, so it didn't particularly bother me. During my current maternity leave, I have been using keep in touch days, and I found them very useful. The way that peds training works is that you rotate around various specialties, and 2 of the most sort of intense of them are neonatology, where you are on the neonatal unit looking after premature and sick babies, and general pediatrics, which is everything from a baby coming back in the day after they were born all the way up to 16-year-olds. And in some hospitals, you cover both of these things at the same time. In my local hospital, the 2 are totally separate. So we have a neonatal unit that covers everything from 22-week premature neonates. And when you are working there, you only cover NICU, and a general paediatric unit where you don't cover any of the birth stuff whatsoever. I went on mat leave in June 2020, before which I'd been working for 12 weeks non-patient facing. So it's been a long time since I saw any patients. And I'd spent that year in general paediatrics, and I'm going back to neonates in September. So when I go back to neonates, it'll have been 2 years since I saw any newborn babies or had anything to do with a neonatal resuscitation. I've got a year in NICU, and then I go back to general paediatrics. And by the time I go back to general paediatrics, it'll have been 2 years since I saw a patient, if I didn't do anything about it, since I saw any children, if that makes sense. And for me, that's not particularly safe, because I will be a senior registrar by then. I'll be expected to know what I'm doing. And so I made a plan, and I discussed this with my educational supervisor, that what I wanted to do was to do some keep in touch days back into paediatrics, and then some keep in touch days back into neonates. And that means that I have reinducted back into both departments, and I can keep my general paediatric knowledge afloat over the course of the next year by doing the occasional locum in that department, just because if you keep your brain, if you keep reminding yourself of something, you don't forget it. So it's been working very well. During the last few weeks of my maternity leave, I did 4 keep in touch days in general peds, and I'm now on my accrued annual leave bit, and I'm doing 6 days in NICU. Now, I've been very lucky in this because in theory, keep in touch days are just supposed to be in the maternity leave, but it worked very well for both the neonatal department and me to actually do those days during the accrued annual leave. So 1 day a week until I go back fully, I am working in NICU, I'm doing all my reinduction, and those annual leave days go back into the pot and I can use them when I need to. So that works brilliantly. And it works well for the department because it means that when they issue the new rota, I can be on that new rota. And it works well for me because it means that I've got a bit of annual leave and I feel like I'm going back up to speed. So this was very much a mutually beneficial situation. So that's fab. I've because that was working so well, and because there has been a history of a certain amount of trickiness organising things in some departments, I have not claimed for a couple of like online courses and training days that I've done to keep in touch during maternity leave, but that's my personal choice. I really like keep in touch days. I was hoping to have done my resource courses as keep in touch days, but there really isn't any availability at the moment because of COVID. I find because I'm a rep, people come to me asking for advice about keep in touch days and about things that can go wrong with them, and I always remind people that they're not mandatory, that you don't have to do keep in touch days, that keep in touch days don't replace a good induction when you go back to work face to face, that it's really good if a training program or a deanery has a sort of a formalized program of things that you can do as keep in touch days, but that you don't have to do it like that. It doesn't have to be like that. I think the important thing is to keep it flexible. So if it suits you to go in and do a couple of sim days and a couple of presentation days of the official return to work thing that your deanery is doing, then that's absolutely fantastic. But actually, if that doesn't fit with your goals or with what you can practically do, then that shouldn't become something that supervisors feel people should do, and that shouldn't become something that trainees feel that they should do as well. I also say to people not to worry if they can't do keep in touch days, because not everybody can. So I am doing Wednesdays because that's when my partner has a day off work, and so we have childcare for the children. If he's not off, there's nothing I can do with the kids. There is literally no availability at the moment of extra childcare whatsoever. I found that the keep in touch days I've done, that the first two I did in general peds, I felt very, very rusty. And there's almost this feeling that you're not allowed to touch a patient. How much am I allowed to do? This isn't, you feel like an imposter at work, really. The brain felt a bit rusty, but after I'd done the first two, it was absolutely fine. And that's what I tell people when I'm in a WhatsApp group with a bunch of people who are on mat leave at the moment, and I keep saying to them, like, don't worry about it. The first one feels like you've never been at work before, but you've got to give yourself the permission to actually, you are a doctor, you are going back to work, this is your environment, you can do this. And I like to push through that so that when I'm back at work, I feel like I'm involved and I feel like I'm somewhere where I belong. I think it's really important to make it clear, especially to really junior people for who the affordability of extra childcare for keep in touch days is a real issue, and who are also actually the doctors who are more vulnerable of being pushed into arrangements that don't suit them, of being told, well, you've got to do this on your keep in touch days, you've got to do your mandatory training on your keep in touch days. I think it's really important to make it clear to them that no, this isn't mandatory. If it suits you and your workplace for you to do your mandatory training on your keep in touch days, then grand. But if it doesn't suit you, then that's not compulsory. So I've done a lot of talking, so I'll stop now.
Thanks, Maddie. It's clear how passionate you are about all this, and it was great to hear the stuff you've been up to. Again, I'm going to come back to support networks as part of the Q&A because I think that's a really important theme. And also the thing you touched on about, the keep in touch days are not being a substitution for a good phased and supported return to work. So I'd like to come back to those two things as we do the Q&As. Parminder, I'm going to come to you next, please.
Thank you, Asha. Hi, I'm Parminder again. I've got two kids, aged 5 and a 1.5-year-old. So my first maternity leave was in 2015, and I actually had 15 months off. And that's mainly because my son needed a surgery, and I ended up taking the extra time that I wanted to make sure he's had all these procedures done when I came back. But my most recent maternity leave was in 2019, and I came back to work around 11 months, because she was all fine and stuff, so that was good. When I came back from my first maternity leave, I was really thinking around, how many days I want to work. Do I want to come back full time? So some of the things Michelle, Radhika and Maddie has mentioned about not having the support mechanism. So my family lives around in India, so I can't really ring my mum and dad and say, can you come and help, please? So I was really inspired by someone I used to work who used to do 3.5 days a week, and my neighbour who used to do 3 days a week. So when I went back to work in 2017, I asked my line manager if they would consider 3-day flexible working, because I think I was the first one in the department. I work in digital and in technology department, so very male focused, very few women. I think I was the first one possibly having a maternity leave at these hospitals within that department and asking to come back 3 days a week. But it was taken really well. I was allowed to do 3 days a week, and I've continued with that pattern. I mean, I was hoping to increase my hours, but then I found out I was pregnant with my second, so I decided to just keep 3 days a week. So last year when I went back, I actually went back to a new role. I left Leeds and I joined NHSX. And I have to say Radhika was very accommodating as well, because I worked for Radhika at NHSX, and I went back 3 days. So I've stuck to doing 3 days because it's worked really well for us as a family, but also as a work. In terms of the keeping in touch days, I really didn't do any keeping in touch days. It was very much like reading regular newsletters that all staff received. So I used to log on to my nhs.net account, read them as and when required. I had ad hoc one-to-ones with my line manager if I needed anything or if he had an update for me. So I think during both maternity leaves, I went straight back to work when I was ready to go back. I'd reach and contact them saying, I'd like to come back in a month's time. Would that be possible? And that's how I did it. I guess from a keeping in touch days perspective, it worked really well for me, but everyone's experience is different. The reason, I guess, for today, for me, again, some of the points everyone has touched about having that support mechanism, being able to talk and share how things work, because I think last year when I was looking for a career move, within NHS, everything is advertised full time and not flexible working. And that was the reason, and I think it's getting better. It's very open now that people can request flexible working. You don't have to go back working full time. So that's quite helpful. Thank you. Back to you, Asha.
Thanks, Parminder. And it's great to see a real life example just on this call of where Radhika has been able to support you really well, and she's been through that herself, and that's a really nice story. And I totally get you about roles generally not being advertised as part-time job shares. That's really tricky. And the role I'm going into from August, they went all out. They put job share, part-time. They were like, if it's the right person, we'll make it work for you. And that was very appealing, especially sort of as a woman working in the digital space. So yeah, really, really good points. So last but not least, I'm going to come to you, Bill, and then we'll move on to 1 or 2 Q&A before we wrap up.
Great, thank you very much, Asha. My story is that I am a cardiac surgeon in Liverpool, and what's been great listening to everybody else is that everybody's story is so unique, and yet there's similar themes that seem to come out of what everyone's saying. So the peculiarities of my situation was that I had delayed starting a family until I'd got my consultant job, so there would be some degree of stability there. My wife is also a surgeon, so like so many others of you, the provision for childcare was relatively limited, and my wife's role was also quite inflexible. And when I took my shared parental leave back in 2019, there was less than 1% of eligible males taking shared parental leave. And certainly I think I was probably the first cardiac surgeon in the UK to do so. So there was a great deal of inexperience, as I think we've already heard from some of the other people who've spoken about how to deal with it and what was the process and how you go about administrating things like keeping in touch days. Certainly there's been an evolution in the way that shared parental leave and the resources that are available to people who want to take it has developed. So it wasn't possible for consultants to take shared parental leave for a few years after trainees were eligible to do so. And certainly at the time that I took shared parental leave, it wasn't allowed for men to have keeping in touch days. So you just sort of had to work out your support going back in. I am due to be taking some more shared parental leave in a few months' time because I've got a 16-week-old baby. So I probably would look that up again, but I think like a proper grown-up, I have basically started off the process by sticking my head in the sand until the last minute. So I'll probably look into that in the next few weeks. One of the things about being rusty when you go back to work is that obviously you're taking on responsibility for patients, and as a consultant, and particularly as a consultant who is going to be stopping somebody's heart, you don't want to be saying to them, look, I am 88% sure that I remember how to do this from 3 months ago. You really need to have that pretty well established when you go back. And because there's no process in place for how it ought to be done, particularly for men returning to work, you just have to take on your clinical responsibility and say, this is what I need in order to provide for my patients adequately. Despite the fact that you might have a department where HR don't know which forms you're supposed to be sending in, or whether you're allowed to take kit days, or when your shared parental pay is going to hit your account, if at all. When it comes down to clinical colleagues, what I found is that even the greatest naysayers, so the old Scottish guy who basically goes, it's unnatural for you to be looking after a baby. They'll come back to support not just you, but your patients too. They'll be in theatre with you, or in the clinical environment, or on the wards, or in a clinic. And if you ask them for help, my experience certainly was that they turned up to make sure that you were safe transitioning back. So even without keeping in touch days, I had somebody in theatre with me for the first couple of lists, and then transitioned back through to independence. So that was my experience.
Great, thank you. It's been so interesting to listen to all of your experiences, and I'll be completely honest, I'm probably a bit naive actually about doing a keep in touch in days as a clinician, and sort of some of the different things you need to think about, which is really great, and it's great to be able to talk about this, I think. So I think my first question is, Radhika mentioned this a bit, and actually, you took the initiative and you set up a network and a group within your organisation to help and support people who were returning to work and in the same boat. I was just curious, for the rest of you, did you have such a thing in your organisation? Did anything exist? Where did you go when you needed that support for all these bits and pieces, whether that was the admin, knowing what leave to take? Did you go to your HR department, or was there a wider network of some sort within your organisation? If you don't mind sort of just raising your actual hand, because we don't have hands on this one, and Maddie, because I can't see you, if you just pop something in the chat if you want me to come to you, and I shall do so. Michelle. Yeah, so for my first two experiences, there really wasn't anyone, and kind of as Maddie's alluded to, in medicine it's kind of this inverse thing, because people don't tend to have children sort of earlier on in their career, so that there quite often isn't anyone that you can ask. I would say, not within my organisation, but on social media we've got a massive
We've got a local WhatsApp group, which Maddie and I are part of, but also there's a massive, it's a less than full-time group on Facebook. And actually the information shared on there and the advice given on there, it is brilliant, and it's colleagues who've been through a similar thing. And actually what is very telling on there is that there's often this kind of crunch point. So there are the policymakers who have this idea of this is what kit days will look like, this is what returning to work will look like, and then there's the on the ground workers, and this is what we want to happen. And there's kind of this strange crunch point at kind of senior leader level or managerial level where they're not familiar with either. So quite often there's a blanket email that goes out saying, oh, you can't have that as a kit day, or you're not entitled to a kit day, or it's got to be taken there, it's got to be taken there. And actually just running that by a massive group of people who've been in that situation, you know, instantly, you know, within 10 minutes, people will have replied saying, that's not true, that's not right. This is the legislation that says that's not right. This is the part of your contracts that says that that's not right. So just having, it feels like people have got you back. And actually, it's amazing about how much, even though these are virtual people, you're all of a sudden not isolated, you're not on your own, and quite often you're made to feel like you're the first person that's ever asked for this. Like you're the first person that's ever had a baby and has returned to work. So having that huge support network has been vital.
Thanks, Michelle. So I'm going to come to Maddie next, and then I'm going to go to Parminder, and then I'll come on to the next question. So Maddie, over to you.
I can't get Maddie to go live because of her camera not working for some reason. It doesn't let you do it.
Oh, it's working again. I'm really sorry. I think there's a problem with Teams. It keeps massively lagging. So even when I was trying to put something in the comment, there was a wait and a wait. And I think part of the problem is that I've been clicking on to unmute, but it's taking maybe 20 or 30 seconds to unmute when I've clicked. So I think that's where. So yeah, so sorry. Anyways, I was just going to agree with what Michelle had said. I think trainee support networks have been the most important for us locally, because we can sort of correct some of the myths and we can point people in the right direction. I think what would really help would be, this isn't going to help for return to work for more senior people like consultants, but certainly from a trainee perspective, if educational supervisors were all aware of what Keep in Touch days are and aren't and had a really flexible approach to this, if this was common knowledge amongst anybody who organises a rota or supervises trainees, it would make it a lot easier, because once you've had a couple of kids and you know people who have had children or who've had time off sick as well, because it's not just for people who you know, we're not the, I mean, Keep in Touch is for maternity leave, but they're really, but the support back to work stuff is also for people who've had leave for any reason. And I think that's a group of people that can sort of fall off people's radar a little bit. But yeah, once you've got the experience and you've been there a couple of times and you've known people who've been there, then you gain that knowledge. But if it became sort of required knowledge for educational supervisors, part of a training package, part of just general awareness of what you might need when supporting people, then those discussions could be had proactively. So when an educational supervisor is meeting with somebody who's planning to go on maternity leave or has had some time off, they can say, what are you thinking about Keep in Touch days? Other trainees in your position have done this. What do you think would work for you? Let's have that discussion. Because I think people sometimes in medicine feel very shy of asking for things, of being seen to impose. And I think a lot of my male colleagues would really struggle with asking for things as well. I think after 2 or 3 mat leaves, some of us get quite bullshy and good at saying, no, this is how I need it to be. And if it can't be the way I need it to be, if it's the way that I can't do it, then I'm not doing it. Here is my contract. But I think we really need to empower the boys to take shared parental leave and to ask for what they need on return as well. And I think if someone in a position of authority is having those discussions proactively and saying, look at your options, not do it this way, but look at all of the options, look at the ways that people have done it around you, then that sort of permits people to be realistic and to be creative.
Oh, So Parminder, same question to you. So you know, did you? So I suppose we've sort of answered the question because Radhika had set something up within your organisation. So I suppose how did that help and benefit you?
So I think the network that we have got within NHSX, that's after I joined NHSX, but it wasn't while I was on maternity leave. So I think it's quite good to share experiences now while I'm working there. But I think if I went on my first maternity leave, I wasn't sure whether, you know, what's the process of requesting flexible working leave? Do you have to fill a form in, for example? You know, I wanted to talk to someone what worked well for them, what hasn't worked well, because I was thinking to go part-time. Is there any specific days, for example, that works well? You know, is there a specific working pattern? So I think from that perspective, I don't think there is a network within my previous organisation, not NHSX, at Leeds, where you know, it was pretty much like I was looking up the policies myself on intranet, logging on, using my VPN connection because I kept my laptop with me during maternity leave so I could access everything. Or I would talk to my mentor who had 2 kids, and she'd gone through something similar to say, oh, how did you do it? What did you, and you know, so through that is, so I think it would really help having a support network where someone can go and ask those questions. So I think one of the route now is through FlexNHS, which is great. Because I've seen a lot of people posting questions through, you know, oh, I'm doing 3 days a week, what works best for everyone. I was also reading about the keeping in touch days questions in the chat, and what I understand, it's been a while since I've looked at the policy, but I think keeping in touch days are paid days that you're actually go into the office and do few hours, whereas if you're reading updates, newsletters, that's really at your own time, at your own leisure. So I don't think you can count them as keeping touch days, but it's more about keeping yourself up to date and on speed what's happening within the organisation. That's my understanding. Sorry, no experience on breastfeeding because I finished by the time I went to work. So back to you, Asha.
Great, thank you. So I can't believe how quickly that 45 minutes has gone. So I'm probably going to have to start wrapping this up. But what I'm going to do is ask each of the panel to just sort of share 30 seconds. What are your final thoughts, your takeaways from today? And then we'll sort of do a wrap up. Bill, can I come to you first, please?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed all of the discussion. I think the main takeaway that I have from this and that I would recommend for other people is to know what your legal entitlements are and to know what your contract says, because quite often in the NHS we just kind of take it for granted that we're going to go in, do a job and then go home, and then life happens and you need to flex. And quite often, as Maddie said so articulately, you tell them what you're entitled to, and quite often they'll go, oh yeah, you are, but it doesn't get offered very often. So having a support network, and especially with things like social media, it's possible for you to empower yourself.
Great, thanks, Bill. Radhika.
Yeah, thanks, Asha. I would say that there has been some good progress on general return to work and the focus on keeping touch days being of benefit to the organization in terms of whether it's clinicians or other staff getting themselves up to speed on what things have happened. But I think the keep in touch days, the general return to work conversations need to now shift focus a little bit, or at least consider the requirements of the person who is on that shared parental leave or maternity leave, to have the conversations like, what would be a good working pattern for me? What do I do if, you know, what do I do in circumstances where I have to take time off immediately as soon as I join? You know, those are the conversations. These are situations that will inevitably happen, but we don't talk about it till they actually happen, and then everybody's worried and panicking and, you know, stressed out. So I think there's an opportunity during the keep in touch days to have those conversations up front, because we have few pediatricians on the call, everybody knows children, as soon as they join nurseries, will fall ill. And I think that's an eventuality that from both a management and staff perspective, we need to discuss and have plans for.
Thanks, Radhika. Michelle, can I come to you, please?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing, like Bill said, is to really know what your rights are, because actually these policies are there for you to help you return to work, and actually, you know, they're there to protect you and to help this transition to be easier. But we're not always great. Sometimes we kind of have to actively seek them out. So I would seek them out, read them, know what you can and can't do. Try and have a good dialogue with your line manager, but also find people that have been in your situation and how they have navigated it, what the challenges were, what was good, what wasn't so good, and just try the best you can. That's really all you can do. And sometimes things work out really well and sometimes less so, but you'll learn, and hopefully you can then pass on that experience to somebody else.
Thanks, Michelle. Maddie, final thoughts, please.
Thank you. It's just been really interesting listening to what everybody else's experiences have been. And I'm not going to repeat what other people have said. I'm just going to say I've been really impressed coming back to work this time as to how well Keep in Touch has worked compared to the experiences I've had in the past. How flexible my educational supervisor and both departments that I'm doing Keep in Touch with have been, and how much easier it's been to find a solution that works for everybody, and that delivers something that's really meaningful to all of us and that benefits both departments and me. And I'm really glad that that's the experience I've had, and that I've got that experience to share with people, because what I'm having at the moment is I feel the way it should be, and that's been really good.
Thank you. And last but not least, I don't keep coming to you last on purpose, sorry Parminder, it's because I'm sort of going around my screen. Your final thoughts, please.
It's okay, Asha. I think don't be afraid to ask, and just have an open dialogue with your line manager, explain your circumstances and work with them. I mean, that's what's worked best for me. If you're open and honest, do it at your pace. What works best for you, I think, would be my final thought. And I think, like everyone else has said, it has come a long way. I think organisations, especially the COVID lockdown, has really changed things, how everything works. So we're heading in the right direction.
Thank you. So we've answered some of the Q&As, or the lovely panel have answered some of the Q&As as we've gone on, and we will share some of the outstanding ones on the Flex Twitter channel just to get a bit of dialogue going about them. We're pretty much out of time, and I just wanted to thank the panelists for joining today's session. Thank you for Cara and Alice at Milton Keynes for doing all of the hard work behind the scenes and keeping me in order. And obviously thanks to Kate, my FlexNHS co-founder, who actually, for me was my support network, a big part of that when I returned from maternity leave and found that difficult. So, really important stuff. I'm going to come to Kate in a second for some final thoughts, but I think for me there's two or three things. I think there's something here about how we support managers to navigate the HR, navigate the policy, and provide those supportive conversations, and whether that means having a support network within your organisation or just enabling them, both really important. I think the second thing is it goes back to there's not one size that fits all. So I was really interested to hear about, actually for some people the kit days weren't useful, or they were useful for for some breaks and not others, and it's about doing what's right for you at that time in your life, and that's really important, and respecting each other's decisions, and knowing that there are options, which I think Bill touched upon quite a lot. And for some people it's a clean break and it makes more sense to just do it when you come back, and that's okay. And I think the third thing for me is just around we just have to keep talking about this like everything else. So that was a real good eye-opener for me. Keep up the communication with your colleagues, and I am just going to go to Kate for some last thoughts, and we'll finish in the next minute or so. So sorry I haven't quite kept to time, but it was such an interesting conversation.
So thank you, Asha, and thank you everyone. I think it was a really powerful, insightful session. I'm not going to say anything that anyone's not already said. So think about it early when you're thinking about when you're maternity, paternity, shared parental leave. Think about it as early as possible. Explore different options. Know your rights. I think Bill's point about that is so important. Know your rights. Know them early. Know what you can take. Know what applies to you and how it might work for you. Find your support network, whatever that looks like at work and outside of work. People that have been through this before, who can give you perspectives and opinions, and expect things to change. What you put in place straight away in your return to work might not be what works long term, and I think that was certainly the case for me. And don't be afraid to explore those different things, but with the foundation of knowing what you can and can't do, and having a support network around you. So thank you. That's it from me. Thank you, Asha, and thank you everybody.
Great, thank you. If panelists want to hold back for a minute or two, feel free to. Otherwise, thank you for joining us today.